Welcome back to the Synergistic CX podcast. This is part 2 of our 3-part episode where we're focusing on luxury shoe store experiences with our special guest, Kapel Malhotra of TSG. In the previous segment, we discussed how luxury shoe companies handle responses to online reviews and also the marketing mix as reflected in those reviews. Now we'll focus on the customer journey and the many touch points that can make or break the customer experience. The customer journey is also known as the marketing funnel, and we'll start with the customer journey map. Okay, so looking at the customer journey itself, the customer journey is, well, really the journey, the drive, if you will, that the customer experiences as they move through their engagement with a brand. And so there are a lot of similarities with every single micro industry. They all start off with some general brand awareness where the customer starts off with their needs. They realize they need a product or service, and then they start exploring that need. They move through researching that, and then they ultimately decide to visit a brand, or whether that be online or in person or perhaps over the phone. And then they actually engage with the company. So they'll talk with the staff, they'll move through the different products and go through the experience there. And then they'll actually, in a perfect world for the company, end up making a purchase and moving their way through that all the way to ideally becoming a brand loyalist. So the customer journey itself is made up of 5 different stages. These are the awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy stages. And inside of those 5 stages are 11 distinct steps. So you can see here on our customer journey map, across the top, you have these 5 different stages: awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. Down below on the next line, you'll see the actual individual steps. So for example, in conversion, once the customer arrives at the store, they experience the store ambience, and then they move on to experiencing the product variety and the quality. And in this particular micro industry, they then move on to sales associate consultation, and then shoe fitting and a demonstration, and so on and so on. On this diagram underneath, you also have the various touch points. So in each step, what part of the company are they interacting with? Is it a staff member? Is it the product? Are there other features of the store that they're dealing with? And so there's a lot of detail here that we track, and down below that, there are actual individual CX methodologies that can be used to measure those particular steps and touch points, whether that be a customer satisfaction survey, whether that be mystery shopping, for example, which can target any of these stages. But there's a whole lot of detail here with respect to the customer experience. So what we do ultimately here, and we'll see this on the next slide, is we go to our moment of truth, which is where we take these online reviews and ratings and we map them using the aspects that are mentioned in those online reviews and ratings. And we map those aspects against the various parts of the customer journey. So if a review is a 4-star review, let's say, but it mentions something positive about the sales associate, but negative about the product, we map that across the various parts of the customer journey. So we'll be able to see how all of these reviews that we've pulled for this micro industry map against the customer journey, and we'll see how this industry looks. Before we step into the next slide, does anybody have any initial guesses on what might be the best or worst scoring areas?
I would say advocacy. For a luxury brand, customers are very loyal, and they have their favorite designers, and they are even sometimes willing to sacrifice aspects such as comfort to have a designer brand because they love it. So my vote goes to advocacy in the West.
I would say, what's important is to get repeat purchases. If you're able to get a repeat purchase from a luxury customer, then your customer lifetime value is very high. For me, that's going to be a challenge for someone. But if they're good at the game, if the brand is really strong, they should get more retentions.
I'm going to guess that payment and pricing is one of the weaker areas, just because that tends to be an area in the customer journey map. On every industry we've seen so far, it tends to be one of the lower scoring areas.
Let's see it.
Okay. So here we have the customer journey map. These are all the different online reviews and ratings aspects mapped against the various stages here. Just to describe what we're looking at, the lines themselves, the line itself represents the average of that particular step of the customer journey. The circle size represents how often that particular aspect or that particular steps aspects were mentioned in the online reviews and ratings. So the larger circles were things that were talked about quite a bit. There's actually a number of larger circles here, which is interesting. But yeah, we see some good scores in research for sure. Store ambiance also seems to be doing fairly well. Very interesting.
So does post-purchase communication, is that a weak space, or is that along with the pricing and payment, is that what we need to pull out?
It looks that way. It looks weaker than the rest. Overall, this is not a horrible customer journey map. We've definitely seen industries that have multiple areas in the red. It does look like it's better than other micro industries overall.
You know what I normally see, the word of mouth and the loyalty across other segments is usually very poor. But in luxury, if you're wearing a particular watch, or if you have some bragging rights around that, and if you're doing some referrals, you can see that that seems to be a high score. Maybe, is that right?
For the repeat purchase portion of it looks that way, yes. But they definitely seem to be weaker in the post-purchase communication. Another aspect that's very interesting here is that gray area, the gray blob that we have on our customer journey map here shows the single standard deviation of the answers. In other words, it's the variance, it's the spread, if you will, and the consistency of
Right.
what reviews are mentioning. And so what's really interesting is you've got some areas on here that are pretty heavily inconsistent. Like even the experience store ambiance there, that one of those first green circles, the big one, the average is good, but there's quite a lot of variance. So there's a number of complaints around the store ambiance. And so that's something that could definitely be tightened up and made more consistent. Similarly, the repeat purchases has another really big blob there, really big range, which kind of coincides, I think, with the post-purchase communication. You've got a low post-purchase communication, and Kapel, you would know better than I would, I think, here, but my initial gut seems to point to these brands aren't following up with their customers necessarily very well after purchase, and yet they're still going to have repeat customers, and they tend to be very, very happy. But there's a huge spread where there's just people who don't want to be a repeat customer. So there's an area here where I think perhaps they could target and focus on to improve the CX.
I think, this is where most of the luxury brands, or the ones that really know their game, they would stay in touch with you over not just new models that are getting launched, also concepts of trade-ins, bring in your old Rolex watch and move for an upgrade. Uh, the servicing, the lifetime warranties, and others, because normally the brand feels, if you purchased a high-end watch today, we're not going to see you for the next 2 3 years. But that's not the case. Or when you buy a new car, we're not going to see you for the next 2 3 years. Again, that's not the case. I personally believe that people who indulge in buying luxury have a particular taste, and that taste is always getting enhanced over a period of time. They will want to look for something that has a better feature or something new that's there. So, for example, in the automotive world or in the watch world, you'll have the oyster, the mother of pearl, the background, or you'll have some more bracelet around it, or something or the other. I think post-purchase communication is where some of the brands, and what we see out here is also they kind of drop the ball. And I think that is where, if they keep that tightly in their hands, I'm sure they can keep on rotating customers and bringing them back for a reason.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, and I think we've seen that with a lot of different micro industries. The post purchase communication, in some cases, is non-existent. But particularly in the luxury segment, I think it makes a lot of sense to stay in touch with those customers, check in on them, even if it is 2 years down the road or something, because they remember those purchases. In a lot of cases, it's not like going to buy eggs from the grocery store. You bought a special watch, or you bought a special pair of shoes, or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to add, my experience in this segment, is particularly in the shoe industry, doing research for some major brands. What we have found many times for many brands, this has happened before, is that repeated customers who have the budget and that are part of that segment, their target, they tend to be much more satisfied than someone that has to save a lot to have that particular pair of shoes for one special occasion and will probably not be able to afford a new one for a very long time. So here is a little bit of a mix of handling the expectations of someone that thinks that is entitled to an even better experience because the extra effort that she or he is making to make that particular purchase in comparison with someone that is familiar with the brand, familiar with the experience, familiar with the value that's coming with that purchase. It's not just buying the label, but the whole experience that that brand comes and brings to the table.
Okay, so key takeaways here that we've seen. Obviously, prioritizing the frontline staff engagement is critical. The circles that we saw there were very large and very green, but that's absolutely something where you don't want the ball to drop. You don't want those ratings to drop. So it's very important, just like we saw with the marketing mix, that your salespeople have a great attitude and engage customers when they first come into the store, and that it's very warm and friendly. The pricing is obviously an area that could be improved. The pricing and payment stage had a definite drop in the customer sentiment. Kapel, do you have any insight there? Do you think it's a pricing structure concern, or is it something about the payment process itself, or is it just people complaining about things being expensive? What do you think?
So, it could be a combination of more than one reason. I think, again, relating to my previous anecdote that I gave in part one of a recording is how do you outweigh the value of the product, than the price?
Mhm.
And sometimes what happens is also how the price is communicated to you. Like we work with a particular brand in the mystery shopping exercise. Most of our shoppers said that the staff is rude, right? And we were like, really? I mean, why would the staff be rude to a luxury customer? And when it came up more than once, we spoke to the brand, and they said, Kapil, we have a little bit of a confusion that should we be talking to a customer too much? Should we be intruding? Because this customer already knows what he or she is looking for. So I said, oh, so this is where the confusion is coming because the customer feels that the staff is not paying proper attention. And when he or she is asking a particular question, let's say on the price, maybe they just give an upfront price and that's it. So the storytelling and the advantages and the benefits and the feel of the product and all that happened in the earlier case that I explained, I think that is where the perceived value is not coming, and hence the price is becoming a deterrent. And I strongly believe that, when you have a product and a brand where you're able to create what I call a love mark, you respect the brand so much, yet you love the brand so much. Like I remember it was last year, my daughter was saving money for a pair of shoes. So was my son. I think for boys, it's apparent they want the Jordans. The, for my daughter, when I asked her what brand do you want, and she gave me a name, and I really didn't know of that name, but I said, okay, it seems like a millennial or a young, trendy brand uh, that she wants to buy, or a pair of shoes that she wants to buy. When I went into a little more detail, and just recently I realized because I was one of the conferences recently that's known as the Indian Fashion Forum, and this particular brand was showcasing a pop-up store where they had a set of drums and musical instruments, and there were people who were playing there, and they said, you know what, this is how our store looks like. We play music, we do gigs at our stores. And if couple, you want to buy a pair of shoes, guess what? You need to be recommended by a musician, because when you're playing at a gig, the most thing that is visible is your pair of shoes. So they've designed it in such a way that people really want to buy the pair of shoe. Now, just imagine, Eric, does the point of price really come in here? No, my daughter is not rich and famous, but she bought the pair by saving that money. So I think price, if handled correctly, should not be a deterrent at all.
And it sounds like that really boils down to the quality and the training and consistency of the salesperson in that aspect, because that's their job to communicate that while you're there in the store and convince you of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And a shoe is just a shoe, right? But well, it's not, right? It's beyond that. So
Hmm.
is that being conveyed or not? And if it's in an advertisement that has been conveyed, is it being conveyed at the store or not? Just imagine you entering into a store where there's music that's being played around, right? It's going to be like, wow, you know what's going on here? The atmosphere changes. And then someone needs to walk you in. He needs to be a musician. Now you can imagine the cult behind the brand. So
Hmm.
my daughter is a vocalist, and she's like, it's like an inner circle type of a thing. We take each other to buy that pair of shoe. So I was like, wow, that's phenomenal. It's beyond the product. It's a community that you've built around it.
That makes a lot of sense. That really builds the concept of the brand.
Yeah.
Okay, so some other key takeaways here: improving the post-purchase communication. That's something we've seen in every micro industry, following up with customers, but particularly in this segment, it could be very, very helpful for the company. And then, of course, optimizing the store ambiance and experience. We saw a lot of variation there, so there's a definite potential to target that particular part of the customer journey with a specific methodology, such as mystery shopping or audits, to make sure that the ambiance of the store is up to the brand's expectations. So now let's step into the marketing mix funnel matrix for the luxury shoe stores. Emil, would you like to talk about this? Explain what we're looking at here.
So the marketing mix funnel matrix is a framework that we have developed that integrates the elements of the marketing mix with the stages of the customer journey to analyze the customer experience data in more depth and in more detail. So what we can see here is the intersection points with regards to the marketing mix and the customer journey, which generate the highest amount of negative feedback. And so what we can see here is that consideration, the second stage in the customer journey with regards to people, scores the highest with regards to negative feedback, almost 30%. And then we have the four cells in the conversion stage, which are the people, product, place, and price. And then a little bit in consideration product and conversion process. So this is really where the red is. And as we like to call it, the objective of a good customer experience management program should be to measure, understand, and remove the red. So this is what the marketing mix funnel matrix is about. It is about the deep dive and the deeper understanding in the intersection of the marketing mix and the customer journey. And this is the highest level of that intersection. We obviously, if you go deeper down to the step level and to the marketing mix element feature, we can actually understand what the action items and the action areas should be. And this is what we're going to do next when we talk about the voice of the customer surveys. So, as I mentioned earlier, so far we have been only discussing the results based on the online reviews and ratings, and there's a wealth of information that we can infer out of those, and that data is readily available for us. But in the realm of the voice of the customer, the customer feedback surveys serve as a critical aid and supplement to the more common online reviews and ratings. So with regards to those, a significant challenge for the businesses is to effectively capture valuable feedback from customer feedback surveys because of the limited attention span afforded by the customers. And therefore, crafting the optimal voice of the customer survey is essential as that directly influences the quality and the reliability of the data that will be collected. And that is why crafting the optimal voice of the customer survey is pivotal for informed decision making and strategic planning. So what we're going to discuss here is our recipe for crafting that optimal voice of the customer survey. We call it the starter voice of the customer survey. And our recipe is actually quite simple. What we advocate about here is let's deep dive into the online reviews and ratings. Let's intersect the customer, the marketing mix, and the customer journey, and see what customers are talking about the most in a negative way. Pull out the top five drivers which are the most negative, and then further drill down into each of those drivers, and again using the intersection of the marketing mix and the customer journey, and again take the most negative experiences and use that to build the starter voice of the customer survey. Now we'll start with a primary question, which is a general satisfaction question, and we'll close the survey with a net promoter question. And let's see how this looks like in this case. So we're going to go back to the mixed funnel matrix, and what we see here on the top is the table that we just discussed, but at the bottom we actually have a deeper dive, the results from a deeper dive into the intersection of the marketing mix and the customer journey. So the top five key drivers based on the weakest performing step. So here we're talking about intersection of the marketing mix element with the customer journey step are the following. Frontline greetings from the frontline staff, and this is intersection of people and consideration. Sales associate consultation, product variety and quality, pricing and payment, and experience, the store ambience. So the five key driver questions that we're going to ask here are as follows. How satisfied were you with the greetings from the frontline staff upon entering? How satisfied were you with the consultation provided by the sales associate, and so on and so forth. So when we take that and create a starter voice of the customer survey, this is how the starter voice of the customer survey for luxury shoe stores will look like. We're going to start with the general satisfaction question. How satisfied are you with the brand? Then we're going to dive into the five key points, the key drivers based on the most negative experiences. What we're going to do is, if each of those five key driver questions is answered with anything different than 5 stars, then we're going to dive deeper into the key driver detail questions, which are not very well visible here, but for each key driver question, we have the key driver details. And then we're going to finish the survey with an NPS question, which is going to be the closing question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend the brand to a friend or colleague? So what we are saying here is that if you follow this approach, assuming that we have already collected and analyzed the data from the online reviews and ratings, this tool gives us the ability to actually take the insights a step deeper and ask the customers more focused questions with regards to what their negative experiences are about. So that is the starter voice of the customer survey for the luxury shoe stores.
This is the end of part 2 of our 3-part episode here on the Synergistic CX podcast, where we're focusing on luxury shoe stores. In the next segment, we'll talk a little bit more in depth with our special guest here, Kapel Malhotra of Total Solutions Group, regarding the customer experience in this industry. Remember that you can download the details of this study for free on our website, cx-channel.com. And you can also follow the CX channel on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your favorite social media to stay on top of each of our monthly podcasts. Be sure to press that subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode.